On today's show, we're going to look how this Stanley Cup playoff has affected the unrestricted free agent market for the guys on the Florida Panthers and Edmonton Oilers. Could we have a trade to announce between the New York Rangers and the Anaheim Ducks? And a whole lot more on today's Locked On NHL.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome inside this Wednesday, June 11th edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me over at Locked On Ottawa Senators. With me, as always, it's the Battle of Ontario edition. I'm joined by Mike DiStefano from Locked On Maple Leafs. Thank you to all the everydayers making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We appreciate each and every one of you, not only checking in here on Locked On NHL daily, Monday through Friday, but you can also get Locked On NHL Game Night on the same feed, plus over 30 shows with local experts covering the biggest stories, like Locked On Anaheim Ducks, where there was a report that they could be close to acquiring Chris Kreider. Later on in the show, we'll look at that from both Anaheim and the New York Rangers perspective. But Mikey, talk about a tough time for an extra day break if you're the Edmonton Oilers after losing 6-1 the other night. They've got to stew on it with no travel day either. Both games are going to be in Florida. Another 24 hours before they get a chance to right that wrong on Thursday night.
Yeah, why? Why are we doing this? Every year we complain that the Cup final is too long. There's too long of a break before the final starts, and then you got 2-game break between game 3 and 4. I don't get it. Let's get this thing going. Should have been playing tonight on Wednesday. There's no basket, or could play last night. Realistically, I don't know why you got this 2-day break. It makes no sense to me. But I'm still excited for this Cup final. I don't know where you sit with that last game. I understand the Oilers got their absolute asses handed to them, but I don't know. I still got faith in this group. You look at their numbers from games 4 through 7. This is a team that gets infinitely better as the series goes on when they start to learn a little bit more about their opponents. What's an 18-2 record in games 4 through 7? So that's something that I'd be hanging my hat on if I were Oilers fans, hoping that they can come back in the series. I think they'll bounce back with a pretty sound game 4.
Yeah, the one thing that everyone knows by now is that game-to-game momentum does not exist. You could lose 25-0 and come back and win 6-0 the next night. It really doesn't matter. What was kind of hilarious, though, and if you're flipping channels yesterday or the other night, probably a week and a half ago by now, with how long the break's been, but that turned into a UFC fight in the third period. You obviously understand it, where it's the emotions are at an all-time high. Jake Wallman, who got 2 separate fines within the game, so he's $10,000 lighter in the wallet. But he said that, look, the Stanley Cup is on the line. Obviously, it's going to be an emotional series, but where do you stand on that, where if you're not going to win the game, try to go out and get a pound of flesh instead?
Yeah, I'm for it. And there's no team that does that better than the Florida Panthers. So for them to get a little bit of a taste of their own medicine, I'm all for it. I'm here. And if I think it's not necessarily message sending, but you do want to let them know, hey, we're not backing down. We're still here. We're going to fight. This game might be over, right? Kind of a, you may have won the battle, but you haven't won the war type of, situation there, where it's this is going to be a long, grueling series just because you put up 6 on us tonight. Just know that we're going to come back at you game 4, and we're going to be just as physical, and hopefully, it'll be a much closer game and hopefully a different outcome if you're Edmonton. But I'm all for that message sending right at the end of the game. Get that pound of flesh, inflict some pain on the opposition, and maybe they'll think twice about laying that hit in game 4 if they're still feeling the effects from game 3.
So one of the Wallman finds was at the end of the game, a couple extra punches to Matthew Tkachuk, who was being held at the time by one of his teammates. That said, the other one was just pure stupidity. If you're going to be greasy, be smart about it. And I think back, obviously, covering the Senators, you might remember this play, but there was a moment against the Penguins where Sidney Crosby is standing by the Sens bench, mid-play, I might add, and Mark Method is like pushing Crosby's like hand with his stick towards the bench, and Mike Hoffman unloads an entire water bottle into his glove. But it was sneaky. It was not detected. Jake Wallman may as well have had a spotlight on him and the whole rink dark. Everybody saw that. And Brian Boucher between the benches for TNT was not impressed. That had to be a new suit for Boucher.
Yeah, he didn't appreciate that much.
He's banging on the wall.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Yeah, it was kind of funny, but
that was hilarious.
I thought I saw though the broadcast, like, didn't they take his glove and shove it in the bench? Like, I thought they took his glove and put it in the bench, and that was why he was getting his retribution. Yeah.
That's hilarious, man.
So
So yeah, you got to be a little smarter. You can play physical, you can play hard, but you maybe want to be a little smarter than that. Seth Jones' reaction on the Florida bench was great. He's like looking across the road. What are we doing?
Yeah, but let's be honest. Like, it's freaking water, people. Like, relax. And the fact that causes such a stir is ridiculous. Like, absolutely ridiculous, if you ask me. There's
What's more ridiculous, that or Nick Cousins' warm-up gate in round 1?
They're both ridiculous. Like, who cares? I mean, literally, who cares? Like, probably Nick Cousins' warm-up gate, because at least, if he takes a shot on the opposition's goal, like, you could have hurt someone. What's water going to do? A little spray water. What? You might get it in your eye. Like, you're flushing out the sweat that's making its way in there anyway. Like, that's all that's doing. He was helping you out. I don't know. I thought that was kind of cheeky to get a fine for that. I get it. It is by the letter of the law, I guess, maybe unsportsmanlike, but really, I think that it is quite an overblown thing for people to be upset about.
Speaking of greasy rats, and I say that with the utmost respect and compliment, when we look at the unrestricted free agents on both the Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers, there's a lot of that type of player available this summer. Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand, notably on Florida. I'd even say Aaron Ekblad plays with a pretty big edge. And then on the Edmonton side of things, Corey Perry, Trent Frederick, both unrestricted free agents. The others, lesser known players on each team, Thomas Noshek, Jeff Skinner, known but not at his peak now at 33 years old, Kasperi Kapanen, and I should have probably put Connor Brown in his own category, just a reliable middle six forward who came back after a torn Achilles and has rejuvenated his career here. Which player outside of Sam Bennett, because I think that's an obvious 1A answer, has elevated their stock and their payday in July based on not only the Stanley Cup final that we're 3 games into, but the entirety of this postseason?
Well, I think it's got to be also probably Brad Marchand. I would think the age is interesting though, because at 37 years old, like, what type of contract is he going to get? But he's clearly showing that he still has it. Like, guy scored 2 breakaway goals in the Stanley Cup Finals the other night. Like, I mean, you got to have a little bit of juice left in those legs to be able to do that, especially in double overtime. So, he's showing that he's still spry. He's showing that he can go into a different organization and still bring that Bruins culture with him and still be that all-star Hall of Fame worthy player. So I think that the intangibles on and off the ice, like Brad Marchand, will bring a lot to a locker room and a lot on the ice as well. So I think he's probably the guy who's going to get himself a big deal. Again, at 37, I wonder what that would look like in terms of term. But I think that's a guy who's definitely rose his stock quite a bit. I would also probably put like Ekblad in there. I think Ekblad's going to get a hefty contract this postseason. Like that, the hit that he laid on Connor McDavid to put him out of the game for a couple of minutes there, like just a thunderous open ice check. And he did the same thing later in the game. I think it was against Nuge. If I want to say maybe Nuge or Perry, just absolutely the guy can hit like a freight train. Big dude, right shot. He can play on a top pair. Like, you just can't find guys like Aaron Ekblad out there. So I think he's also, if we're talking about guys who are going to garner the most interest in terms of maybe what their total contract salary will be, the total number, I would say, yeah, I'd probably go with a long-term deal with Aaron Ekblad probably being the highest.
Yeah, and obviously first overall pick. He would be the second highest, and maybe even the highest. So who gets paid more this summer in an AAV role, Aaron Ekblad or Sam Bennett? Both same draft, by the way, so the same age, 2014 draft.
Ooh. Where are they signing the contract?
That's a good question. Let's say they both re-sign in Florida, for argument's
Mm,
sake.
which I think is likely too, to be honest with you. I think they both sign. That's a good question of who they decide to sign for more money. Like,
Right now, it's no contest. Aaron Ekblad's coming off a contract that's paying him, I believe, $7.5 million, correct?
yeah.
And Bennett's making 4.5.
I don't know if you look at that and if that really matters. I probably like I don't know. A week ago, I would have said Aaron Ekblad, right?
Yeah.
But now you're looking at the possible Conn Smythe winner for your team's second straight Stanley Cup. Like that's a
Yeah.
very valuable player to that franchise.
But so is a
But
top defenseman. And let it be known, too, we got
he
some playoff
is.
goggles on for Sam Bennett. Aaron Ekblad has 6 more points as a career high in a single regular season than Sam Bennett. Oh, yeah, and he's a defenseman.
I know. But trust me, as someone who's had many a successful regular seasons, being a Leafs observer, that don't mean squat. If you can get it done in the playoffs, that's all I really care about. So the fact that Sam Bennett, yeah, career high 51 points in the regular season, not the best. What he's done in the playoffs, I think that's all people will care about. Like
Yep.
honestly, and he'll get paid accordingly. I'll probably say Ekblad, though, I think gets more money. Ultimately because A, younger, B, he's a defenseman. However, bringing in Seth Jones allows them to kind of move off of Ekblad if he wants too much money, I think. So that's the other thing where I question if he returns or not. If he's looking for the most money, I don't think it's going to be in Florida. That I'll say.
And for this exercise, you got to also point to Connor Brown just for the simple fact he's making $1 million per season. He showed that he's back. He's a middle six guy. I think he's going to sign for closer. You don't think
Didn't
he's
he?
going to sign for closer to what he was making before, which was closer to 3.5?
Probably, but didn't he also make uh isn't bonuses involved in his contract? Like didn't he make a $4 million bonus this year?
Did he?
Or was that
I
last year?
No, it was last year. It was last year. Yeah, it's
Okay.
a $1 million. It's once you're coming off a big injury, you can
Mhm.
sign with bonus filled contracts. And it was 3.225 in performance bonuses with 10 games played. And he played 71. So yeah, he
And
definitely
had like 2 goals.
four. Yeah. Yeah, this year back to 30 points, though. He's got 5 goals in 17 games. And Corey Perry at 40 years old showed that he can still play. So definitely going to get a contract. Nate Schmidt's been awesome. I just see him staying in Florida. Obviously loves Paul Maurice, going back to their time in Winnipeg together. So lots of cash is going to be handed out to these players in the Stanley Cup final based on not only the pedigree, but the talent that they have shown. A player who has been paid on talent and pedigree, a former 50 goal scorer, could be on the move. What would the Anaheim Ducks be getting in Chris Kreider at this stage in his career? And is it setting up a big move for the Rangers? That's next. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. You know we love Wonderful Pistachios here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I got some at my desk always. They are a snack that's both delicious and nutritious. You can crack into a great source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. One of the highest protein nuts, each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. They're packed with fiber, better for you unsaturated fats that will help you feeling fuller longer throughout the day. You can get the no shells variety. I throw those in my yogurt every morning. Delicious. They're great in salads. Or if you like snacking and cracking, then just get the shell variety. I call them oysters of the tree because you just crack them open. It's this beautiful little oyster in there that tastes delicious. So get to the store, get Wonderful Pistachios. We love them here, and you will too. So go to Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios. Get cracking. Get snacking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers making us your first listen. Now here on the Locked On Podcast Network, it's a lot like the National Hockey League. Sure, the final is still ongoing. Armando Velez over at Locked On Florida Panthers and Nick up at Locked On Edmonton Oilers. They're still buzzing day in and day out. But Mikey, the league's moving on. The league is moving on. We're seeing contracts. We're seeing head coaches being hired still across the league. We even got a head coach firing last week with Pete DeBoer in Dallas. So that job is still vacated. A very intriguing one if you're a head coach without a job right now. But the Anaheim Ducks, they made their coaching hire. It's Joel Quenneville. And clearly the message from Pat Verbeek is we're sick of being in the lottery. They've been in the lottery. They've drafted well, but they needed to get NHL veteran players. They've already made one move with the New York Rangers last year, getting Jacob Trouba in the middle of the season. And Frank Saravalli is now reporting from Daily Faceoff that the Ducks are closing in on a deal for Chris Kreider, who's still making $6.5 million, had a very disappointing season for his standards last year. He's got 2 years left on his deal, and he had 22 goals and 8 assists in 68 games last season. What are your thoughts on if this deal does go through? And it sounds like the return would likely be a second-round pick prospect, a prospect who was drafted in the second round back in 2019, who plays for the Erie Otters, and a guy who's a little bit further along, Carey Terrence is his name.
Yeah, it effectively sounds like a cap dump, if you ask me. Like they're just trying to clear out some money and try and clear out the old core is almost what it seems like in New York. And we can get into that and what this means maybe for the Rangers' future in a second. But, I like the move for Anaheim. Like you mentioned, they went out and this was a very young group over the last few years. Like they've really just been, just drafting and tried to develop this young core of, Leo Carlson and now I guess Troy Terry's a little older, but Mason McTavish, Trevor Zegras. They've got a lot of good young defensemen. They brought in Trouba to kind of help that as a good veteran in the locker room. And now you're trying to bring in, a veteran forward to try and help usher in, the Carlsons, the McTavishes, and the Zegrases of the world. So I kind of like the move. I still think he's got some game. He's not the 50-goal guy he was a couple of years ago for sure. I think he could still probably pot you 25-ish goals. Like, what did he score? He had 22 goals in 68 games. Yeah. So that's a 25, 30 put pace goal rate. So I think he could still be a very effective piece on a team like the Anaheim Ducks. And he's a good veteran, plays the game the right way. And hopefully, a guy who has a lot of playoff experience, been to a cup final, 2 cup finals. No, they go to 2 cup finals with Chris Kreider. No, just the one, I think.
Yeah, 20.
But either way, a couple deep runs up to the conference finals. So he's got that playoff experience too. So you're bringing in someone who not only will give you some on ice productivity for a very cheap rate, but also I think it'll be really good for that locker room as well.
Yeah, I mean, cap isn't a problem for the Ducks. They currently have $38.6 million in cap space right now. Now they do have to take care of some business in their own backyard with Mason McTavish, Lucas Dostal, both restricted free agents in line for a huge raise. But you could also see a world, right, where John Gibson is finally moved. It feels like every season he's on the trade bait board. He's got 2 years left at 6.4. So if they're able to move out that money, you're basically just replacing Gibson's money with Chris Kreider. And look, like Anaheim Ducks have gotten veteran players before. It's not like this is a team that is only got young players. They went out and some would say overpaid for Alex Killorn. He's 35 years old. They've got Frankie Vetrano locked up there. He's 31 years old. Ryan Strome's over 30. On the back end, they added Trouba, who's 31. They have Radko Gudas as their captain at 35 years old. So it feels like they're just kind of missing more of that middle range. Like outside of Troy Terry, everybody is either under 25 or over 33.
Yeah, pretty much. That does seem to be the case. And I mean, that's a decent mix. I guess you got some young players who are being ushered in by some vets, I suppose. So, it's kind of it's where you expect a team that's kind of been where they've been over the last few years, a team that's ready to make make that leap where it's like, okay, we've given you a couple of years of that youth to try and do something. They've added a few veterans along the way, but now they're ready to take that jump as, the Zegrases, the McTavishes of the world, the Jackson Lacombs of the world,
Dude, he had
who is
14 goals last year.
Dude, Jackson Lacombe is a beast. Like, that is a guy. I'm a hockey card guy. Like, Jackson Lacombe cards were stupid at one point. Like, he had like 50 something points this year. Came out of nowhere. He was playing like 24 minutes a night, like playing on top of it. Was crazy. Jackson Lacombe is going to be a terrific defenseman for a very long time. But like, you need those finds if you're going to take those steps. You need someone to kind of come out of the blue, come out of nowhere. They already have a really good young up-and-coming decor there, like Mintyukov, really solid defenseman, Olin Zellweger, obviously. But then you get a guy like Lacombe coming from out of nowhere, and you couple that with some veterans like Gudis and Trouba, you're in a good spot defensively. We both like Lucas Dostal as a goaltender. So I think they're only a couple forwards away. There's some, James Myrtle wrote in The Athletic the other day that they may be gearing up to make a $14 million pitch to Mitch Marner. Like, you add Chris Kreider and Mitch Marner to that forward group, that changes things drastically for the Anaheim Ducks.
Yes, it would. We'll be watching them very closely because they got trade chips too. Not only John Gibson, but it feels like Trevor Zegras has always been talked about like that. Is he a long-term Duck, or do they look to improve their roster that way as well? Fascinating times in Anaheim under Coach Joel Quenneville coming forward, and a team that hasn't made the playoffs in far too long. On the other side, 1 year is far too long for the New York Rangers to not make the playoffs, at least with their internal expectations. So what does this potential deal mean for them? That's next. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So if Chris Kreider does in fact end up going to the Anaheim Ducks, all signs pointing in that direction, the New York Rangers would gain $6.5 million in cap flexibility while acquiring Kerry Terrence, who was the captain of the Erie Otters this past season, had 20 goals in 45 games there, played at the World Juniors for Team USA in a depth role, but I led with the most important part there, Mikey. It is the cap flexibility, and I don't even think they'd be done there. If you're Mika Zibanejad, when you start wondering when a phone call could be coming for you.
I think Mika Zibanejad is a guy. I think anything's on the table, realistically, for the New York Rangers. I think that they want to probably mix it up. Like, there's something went terribly wrong with that team last year, and they got to figure out what it was and get it out. Like, I find it hard to believe, honestly, that like Trouba and Kreider were the problems in New York. So for them to be the scapegoats and the sole scapegoats doesn't seem like it's going to help the New York Rangers. So they might, move out more than just Kreider. And Zibanejad's a guy who probably will be at the top of the list. I think there'll be interest around the league, although
that's a lot of money, a lot of terms.
It's a lot of money. 8.5. He's got 5 more years left on his deal at 32 years old already. Like, how many teams are going to be looking to bring on that type of term for a guy who, has had health issues and had a down year? Yeah. So that's a worthwhile conversation to have. Could possibly a Vinny Trocheck, could they look to move off of JT Miller after just bringing him in? Maybe if they can, find a partner for him. I thought I heard that even they're listening on like Keandre Miller and Alexis Lafreniere, like possibly if there's some teams out there that are interested in those two players, like they could be, available if the right deal comes around. So I think it could be a busy, busy summer for the New York Rangers.
Do you think that the core that they have there should be able to bounce back? Like, do you think that there are a few, well,
what's the core now? Like Trouba and Kreider were such fabrics of that core. It almost seems like they don't really have an identity in a core anymore.
Fox, Panarin, JT Miller.
I guess
and probably Trocheck too.
Yeah, I guess that's what you're looking at this point. Like, Zibanejad's been there forever. You probably would have to throw him into that mix as well. But like, here's the thing. On paper, I like this roster. I liked it last year. I was shocked to see how bad it went and the fact that they missed the playoffs. Utterly shocked. You and I both. We're very much Rangers stands on this
Yeah.
podcast.
Used to be. I might be out. We'll see what they
Used
do.
to be. Well, that's it, right? Like used to be. Like on paper, it looks good, but when they get on the ice, it stinks and it's rotten. And I don't understand why. And maybe an off season, just have everyone go their separate ways and clear their heads and come back and regroup. Maybe that will fix the situation. Did they got a new coach, didn't they?
Yes, they've got Mike Sullivan in
Yeah, so
charge
like
now.
maybe Sully can get them back, obviously a great veteran coach, although so was Laviolette, but maybe just a new mindset to get guys in a different mindset and have this team find themselves again. But yeah, there's something up there in New York. I could see there being some more big changes ahead.
An extremely awkward situation for David Quinn, who was hired as an assistant coach after being a former head coach for the New York Rangers a few years ago. So you got to wonder, I'm sure it'd be very minuscule if it is, but if that could kind of be like, hey, we should probably move out some of the guys who played under him as a head coach, because the dynamic just feels so weird. If he's got the same group that he was the head coach, he comes back, that would not be a high priority. The biggest priority for the Rangers is not being a team that was mentally fragile with the way they played. They got out to a bunch of leads. I'm curious to see how many blown leads they had, but it felt like there was a lot of games that they just let slip away last season. They had when they were tied after the first period, they were a 500 team, which I guess makes sense. I guess they just didn't score the first goal often enough. Less than half the games, and when the opponent scored first, they were 13, 28, and 3. These numbers aren't as much as I thought. When they were leading after 2 periods, they were 28, 1, and 5. So I guess they lost out on 5 points in that sense. 7 if you include the actual loss, which was to Ottawa, by the way, at the right around the trade deadline. But jokes aside, this is a team that has way too much talent on paper to be this bad, especially with Igor Shesterkin. Like, they've got to be better. So yeah. I'm going to be curious. They're, to me, a team to watch if they're looking to trade that pick in the first round. I believe they hold the 12th. I could tell you in 2 seconds here. They've got the 12th overall pick, correct, in the NHL draft. And could that be something they look to package in a trade? Hopefully, if you're a Rangers fan, not to just unload a bad contract, even though they are a free agent destination just by geography and with the original 6 and everything. But to me, that would be a piece where you'd be trying to get your roster a lot better. But man, Chris Kreider, legend in New York. Like, you can't think of the New York Rangers in the last decade plus without thinking about Chris Kreider, who's played 883 games for the organization, has 326 goals, 582 points, and has been a big part of playoff runs for them as well, with 123 playoff games. So we'll see if that's the first big domino that falls in the trade market this offseason.
I think I think it's going to be a busy offseason. With the cap going up, like there's just more opportunity for teams to make some splashes, right? More opportunity to bring in star players and guys who are on big contracts. So I think we could see quite a busy offseason ahead. The Chris Kreider trade, the first of many to come, I think.
All right. Well, let's see what happens in the trade market, the free agency market. The NHL draft is only 3 weeks away. Let's go.
The draft. How would you've been doing, on the Locked On Sens, you've been, recording your mock drafts and stuff. So I imagine you've taken a look and, you've done some scouting on the draft. Like, really quickly, how would you summarize it? A good draft, deep draft, top heavy? Like, how you looking at this year's draft? Like that 12th pick you talk about, would that be what type of player could you get at that point?
I think this is the type of draft where teams are going to fall in love with their own lists. I think it's going to be one of the more volatile drafts that we've seen in a long time. There's about a consensus top 12, maybe, and that might even be stretching it to the Rangers pick. I think maybe even more so a consensus top 10. And then after that, like, you're going to see guys who public sphere scouts have ranked in the second round go in the top 20 for sure. No doubt. There's a few real X factors. So I'm thrilled with that because it's going to make the drama even better on draft night. But holy smokes, it's going to be I'm not answering the question, but it's going to be really interesting to see. I think, like I said, teams are going to fall in love with their own list and convince themselves that this is a great draft. It's not a great draft, especially you look next year is going to be unreal. Last year was pretty decent. The year before was really good. This is more like a 2022 draft. Like you're looking for middle six players. And who knows, maybe a guy in the second round is going to win the Calder Trophy a couple years later. Shout out to Lane Hudson, as that was announced just yesterday. And now all of the pre-award show awards have been given out. They're going to wait for the actual award show to give out the MVP among others.
Yeah. What's the point anymore? I don't understand it. Like, there's 0 point having this award show right now. I don't get it. But anywho,
all good, man. Hey, Cup Finals probably maybe going to be wrapped up by the time we're on next. We'll be looking forward to breaking that all down, and then we'll turn our attention even more into the draft and off season. For Mike DiStefano, I'm Ross Levitan. You can find us over at Locked On Senators, Locked On Maple Leafs. We are your team every day.